Andrew Gansler, 3 Haven Road. First, I applaud the board's efforts to engage and find ways, explore opportunities to reduce the tax burden on the town and its residents. I guess something needs to be done more of. I'm not sure that this exact proposal is the way to do it, especially with what we heard about Toll Brothers. Ms. Morella and others have mentioned affordable housing. $485,000 for a unit does not sound like affordable housing to me. I'm not sure how many seniors can afford that type of unit. And the idea of having places for people 55 and older to be able to afford and live in Woodbridge, I think is commendable. We need to pursue that, but I don't think this type of proposal is achieving that goal. So I think I encourage you to pursue other avenues that would make senior housing available as affordable. There was talk about amending the plan of conservation and development. I think that this type of development would create an opportunity to require such development that the housing would be LEED certified. The construction is done in an environmentally sustainable way with not just building materials, public transportation, instead of 2-car garages, 1-car garage and access to public transportation. Those types of things will enhance the development and livability of the town as a whole. I'm still perplexed as to why we're only pursuing with Toll Brothers. Where other developers solicited, involved.
We had an expression of interest, and there was only one response to that, and that was from an entity in Farmington, Connecticut, and the response did not include an offer to purchase. So the only response we've had is
okay. For now.
As we speak.
And again, just on the line of livability, the Toll's presentation great stress on the fact that the living space is all going to be on the first floor. So why create such a large structure? Another, Toll Brothers is the ancient version of the townhouse instead of the more refined one-level houses.
I would like to back up a little bit more toward the zoning changes that might be necessary for this particular parcel. I'm sensitive to the fact that we do need some sort of housing that should be divided over. We need to be looking more at ways of reducing the financial burden of this and ways of being able to manage the golf course as open space. But I also know that there are other parcels of similar size in Woodbridge, very close to main roads, which are in private hands. If we change the zoning such that this is allowed on this parcel, what is to prevent a similar type of high-density development within some of these other similarly sized parcels? Can we, say, enforce the single-family homes?
I think that's a really good question. And that's the whole process that's going to have to happen in front of your town planning of development. You've done that already with the village district. You've set up a specific district in your adult restricted housing down there on Bradley Road. And I believe you can do that, especially here because you have as a town on a golf course, you have a golf facility that's serviced by water and sewer. And I think there was a mistake, but there is water and sewer to this parcel. And that's one of the things that was driving the town to originally purchase this property, because water and sewer is available to this property. And that would have driven the other development that was being proposed a number of years ago, as well as an affordable housing application. So I think that these are valid concerns, and that's what's going to be part of the zoning process when you go through and design and told those who have to propose a district that your planning and zoning commission can look at and feel comfortable that it works within a plan of development and works within the confines of where you want to see this type of development, if that's what you choose to say yes to. It should be tailored to be, in this instance, very close to this type of development in your golf course, sort of a synergy with that. And that can be done through that process. Those are the comments they'll have to put forward, both when they have the public hearing for the plan of development changes, if they go forward at that, and then when the district is proposed by the applicant, go in that process.
Roger Sherman, Fairview Road. There we have water and sewer in the property. Is that on Woodbridge Road there? Are we going to tie in there, or are we going to tie in Fountain Street?
I'm being told Fountain Street.
You're going to so you're going to come right through the property and tie directly to Fountain
I believe that's correct.
Street. Are you going to be doing road improvements to the road? That's a very narrow road, it's dark at night. That's already cut through for many vehicles coming from 34 through there. I walk that way all the time. I run over all the time. So the additional housing, traffic, I worry about that too. I don't think this plan is good for Woodbridge. Do we have a backup plan? We are working on the backup.
This is the plan that's being presented. If it doesn't pass, then this will be passed on in taxes in order to maintain the Country Club of Woodbridge. As simple as that.
So we can come up with another plan, say 3 years down the road, we'll pay some of the debt off.
We can come up with other plans, I'm sure, over time, but this is the plan we've come up with at the moment. We have someone who's actively willing to do it. We don't have anybody willing to do it in the Woodbridge Estates situation. These people are willing to invest their money in Woodbridge. They feel, and I'm not speaking for them, they feel they can sell these units, or they wouldn't be doing it. It's as simple as that. So we have a real live proposal.
I know most of the value of our houses have dropped, and I don't know how this is going to enhance our value in this town. That's why I'm
If the question is, will this development have a positive effect on the value of the rest of the single-family stock in Woodbridge, that would take some sort of micro or macro economic study that I can't comment on that.
So if people come in and they buy these units and say, okay, they're in for a couple of years, they get foreclosed on, who can the bank sell them to? Are you going to go to 55 and over, or can anybody buy them?
No, if you're saying hypothetically,
Yeah.
a bank foreclosed on one of the townhomes, it would still be age restricted. That covenant runs with the land.
So it will always be 55 and under.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy Wade, 181 River Road. In thinking about coming to this meeting tonight, I actually read the town plan of conservation and development, and I wanted to, in case people in the room don't know much about it, it's an 81-page plan that was put together about a decade ago through an extensive process. There was an all-town survey that was done. There were workshops. Many people in town participated in what became a collective vision for the town. by the townspeople. It establishes at the beginning several key objectives of the plan. I just want to read 3 of them because they're relevant to what we're talking about tonight. Maintain and enhance the rural character marked by careful and ordered residential development. Establish a thriving village district consisting with coherent aesthetic, architectural, and landscaping design. Maintain and encourage preservation of open space. It's my belief that allowing condominium development within our residential A zone, which is the 1.5 acre zoning, is completely contrary to the goals of our town plan of conservation and development. Further, I'm extremely concerned about creating a zone for condominiums within our residential A zone. Currently, on Bradley Road, it's not residential A. It's zoned for much more dense development. But the property that we're talking about is the residential A zone. I believe that if we open the door on our residential A zoning, a crack, you can rest assured that Toll Brothers will use its $2 billion in assets to kick the door down. Allowing condominiums in our residential A zone, I believe, devalues what remains of the Country Club of Woodbridge property. So what we're left with is worth much less if we sell off this piece. It devalues our town. Part of the image of our town is that we have open space, that we have large lots. Our town website, the first sentence on our town website is something like, Woodbridge is a town of rolling land, open space, large residential lots. That's what we are, and that's why most of us came here in the first place. In addition to the question of the gentleman before me, I believe, and again, I'd be interested in some data on this, but I believe that allowing condominiums in our residential A zone, on an individual level, it devalues our properties much more than the $200 in taxes we would have to pay to maintain the golf course as it is.
I just want to say one more thing.
Well, wait,
I just wanted to say one more thing to correct the attorney. I sat in the zoning
which attorney
board.
are you referring to, Mr. Weiner?
Mr. Perino.
Mr. Perino. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Perino made a statement that is totally incorrect, because I actually participated in writing the zoning regulations that you are referring to. And our age-restricted zone requires that there is currently water and sewer at the site, which there are not at the site. The sewer happens to be down the hill in New Haven, and we did that for a very specific reason. Because if you start allowing people to bring it wherever you want, you're not going to have the same restrictions in land use. So that site is not currently served. That's incorrect, sir, and you're not familiar. So I want to respond to that one comment because you're giving the townspeople incorrect information. And read that zoning regulation more carefully. It's been used to have certain parcels not be able to have that kind of development for just that reason. Where the site was allowed in town, which is on Bradley Road, which we do currently have an age-restricted zone, which hasn't been developed yet, we have water and sewer right there, not any place else. It has to be brought in. Of course, you can bring it anywhere then. So you're actually going against the intention of the regulation as was written, what you're suggesting.
Can I just respond to you?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I did read your entire regulation, and I do see how it specifically is geared to a specific parcel. I understand that. It was my understanding, which kind of put back when you bought it, I was under the impression, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I thought there was sewer to that site. Now, whether or not the pipe is big enough for any kind of development is a different question, but there's sewer to that pipe, because we get a sewer bill. The town gets a sewer bill, so we get You have sewer to that site. As for water, you do have a pipe there. It's not necessarily up to the size you would need for this type of development. So there's cost associated with doing that. But that's factual. Either it is or it isn't. I'm not trying to make it up. It's your choice on this. My only point about the district is you, and you know from when you did this down in Flats, you can create the district to be very specific to the kind of parcels you would like to see there. If the town decides it wants to proceed down this line, again, it's your choice. If you want to do this, then the process continues on to change the plan of development and to look to see, can you do a district that can be tailored so that you don't have the issues that are being raised. And I'm not disagreeing with
But
you.
you have to change currently as is written, because it does not comply.
I agree with you. That's right. You
And
can't.
I want that to be absolutely clear to the public, because that's very important.
You're right.
In controlling the type of development in our town.
I don't disagree with you.
I just want to confirm that we do get a sewer bill. The current sewer bill is paid by the operator at the moment, but the property does have a sewer bill, so in case there's any question on that, there is a sewer to the property.
There is sewer and water in Country Club of Woodbridge, so let's remove any doubt about that. That's a fact. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Not illegal, not at all. We're part of the regional sewer authority.
Sheila McCracken, 63 Center Road, speaking again. I too went and read conservation development. Kathy, I know you always who recently read it. It's on the town website. And one of the things I was struck with, because I understand it took a lot to create that plan, and I took part in the survey, I came to the workshop, and all this kind of stuff. Part of the key objectives of the plan that Kathy read from, there's actually a couple, there's actually 6. I think she read 3, so I just want to put the other 3 in front of you. The first one is to maintain and enhance the educational systems of the town. And I think we spoke to this earlier when we mentioned that the enrollment at Beecher Road School is concerned, and people are echoing it tonight. The enrollment has been as high as 1,010 students. We currently have 736 students there. So we've got some space, not a lot of space, but we have some space. And we have projections going out 10 years looking at all housing stock. So preserving the quality of the program at Beecher involves keeping the enrollment reasonable that we can handle. So that's actually the top list in the key objectives. And then it's maintain and enhance the rural character, which Kathy mentioned, establish a thriving village district, nurture and extend a shared sense of town identity and community, maintain and encourage preservation of open space, which Kathy mentioned, and then lastly, create opportunities to enhance tax revenues consistent with the preceding objectives. So I have a lot of interest at Beecher Road School. My kids have gone through there already, but that's kind of where my heart is, and I would say maintaining and enhancing the educational system. Age-restricted housing achieves that goal. So from my point of view, this proposal is hitting at least that top goal, and I think it's well positioned. That's personal.
Roger Hudson, Bureau Road. I've heard a lot tonight, and it's late, and I'll be very brief. I know some people think that's impossible, but I'll try. One thing I really am impressed with is that the passions are here, but this audience that was 120 at one time have maintained a civility that I think is very positive and reflects well on the town. And we may feel strongly, but I congratulate all of us for not going out of control. Even though you feel very strongly, I appreciate the fact we can have an open dialogue. I'm a member of the Conservation Committee. What bothers me sometimes is that passions get out of hand and statements are made that are maybe need clarification. Conservation Committee, which I'm on, has respect for certain members to both the boards. And I think you guys are doing a fine job in tough times trying to keep this town together and taxes under control. control. So I don't get any sense that you don't respect the Conservation Committee. And I have a long history of buying land, spearheading the purchase of open space. I don't think any first selectman has bought as much open space as I have during my administration. So I feel very strongly about preserving this town in the manner in which I think we all want to preserve it. But this opportunity has its unique values. Number one, the timing is very good for us in the sense that interest rates are low. We have a first-rate developer that can come in and build these homes. And to hear people say that they're going to flip-flop property, I know the Toll Brothers. I personally know the Toll Brothers. And I've been assured by one of them that that's not going to be the case, that they're going to pursue this. And I have entrees right to the top, so I don't think that statement is realistic. The other point I want to make is that is there any perfect time for a deal? There's always something that can be studied. There's always changes that are right around the corner that may beg, let's put it off. Let's put it off a little bit more. You get a point in time where you should make a decision, and we're at that point in time. I think we owe it to the seniors in this town. We want to keep a composite of old and young. And those people that are going to move out, whether or not we have this development, are going to move out. So I would like to see them have an alternative to keep their roots in our town and maintain a balance between old and young. So netting out, I want to again commend the boards, of which, by the way, we run against a national trend. We have boards, Republican and Democrat, that are working together and see things alike. And I think that reflects again positively on your work and on our town. One final point. This whole project has been discussed over a long period of time. Over a period of time, leave the long out, that's a relative term. I know I brought it up to the conservation group. We had discussions of it. Was it long enough? Was it detailed enough? That's a judgment call. But we brought up these issues on the Conservation Commission. So I heard people talk about this. I know as Ed has reviewed, there have been many times this has been brought out to the public. So this isn't necessarily something new. Should we study it more? Should we give it more thought? That's your call. Right now, I just want to go on record in saying that I favor this. I think the timing is right, and I commend the board for finding a way to get this done.
I'll be very brief because I'm kind of tired. But I was hoping that somebody on the board would hire a realtor, a commercial realtor, and not give up so easily on selling the whole portion of the golf course. It seems as though you tried for a few months, it didn't work out. You only got three. If I sold the house that way, I gave up after 3 months. What is that? Are you pursuing selling the whole golf course? Have you tried to find a commercial realtor who will take this on?
We put this in the request for proposal. We advertised it extensively throughout the country. I'm talking about the golf course in September of 2010.
I know, but you advertise it, what you do. That's like a home for sale by owner, that's what you did. What you do, if you're really serious about selling it, is you hire a commercial realtor who specializes in these kinds of properties, and you give it to them, and they go on and they have, they sell it. What you did is you put an ad out. If I did that.
No, we worked through a golf consultant who markets golf courses around the country.
Is he still trying to sell it? No, you get a commercial realtor who sells these properties. I can give you a list of names if you'd like. But I'd like to see that listed as well as, perhaps other builders. I mean, it seems as though you made up your mind very quickly without really pursuing other options for yourselves.
We pursued this option in September of 2010.
And
We had one
it's
response.
less than a year later, and when did you stop pursuing it? I mean, it sounds to me as though you pursued it for a few months. It didn't work out after you negotiated with only one person and people weren't interested. Would anybody sell their I mean, this is really, so.
There wasn't any market for it.
You don't know,
We
you haven't, no, you've only talked to one person. What you need to do is you need to hire a professional realtor who specializes in.
Only one person responded.
But you didn't hire, if you had hired a professional realtor, they'd still, I'm not a.
We hired a professional person to market golf course. That's what we did.
And are they still doing it? How
No.
long, well, how long did he try to market it? How many
We marketed over a period of months.
Over a period of months for this, for a parcel of land that could be $7 million, that's hardly anything in this market. I will give you my time to, within a week, some names of commercial realtors who have national scope, and I would expect you to follow through on it.
Okay, thank you.
Rick Burdell, 28 Whitewood Drive. I want to go back to the beginning of the meeting. Be nice and quick. When you said the referendum is going to be when, November 30th, and then I think
The special town meeting will be November 30th here in this room at 7 o'clock. And then that will be adjourned to have a referendum on Tuesday, December 13th, in this room again from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. if the Board of Selectmen votes when we conclude this public information session to do that. I assume they will.
well, what I heard tonight is a lot going one way, a little bit going this way, that way, against it, this way, for it. And I would recommend that in lieu of 10 days from now, the 30th of the month, you have a holiday in between, there's another holiday in between that, and you have New Year's. I would move that the Board of Selectmen really sit down and take a look at this and say, with what we've heard tonight, let's try and set this back after the first of the year when we can do more research and more than townspeople can think about it more and come and vote intelligently. That's my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Ward, Elders Lane. Just had a question, if you could clarify part of the deal. If the 50 some-odd units don't sell in some particular amount of time, are there other contingencies built in or penalties? Is there a one-time $2 million and done, the town gets its money, or are there other factors depending on the sale of homes?
The contract is currently proposed and being discussed is that the purchase price is paid in 2 installments. Half of it after closing, which is 60 days after they've obtained all their approvals. And then the other half, 21 months from the date of closing. So it's not tied to how many units have sold.
And has the town projected, they're basing a lot of the revenues on the sales of these homes, based on other adult living centers around, if they're anticipated, 100% occupancy at each rate. I saw that it was quickly very small in the back of the room on the projected revenues. I think it was like 3 to 4 years to sell all of them, or 5, 7. I missed the total.
About 6 per quarter.
Six.
The financial director is saying about 6 units per quarter is when they would be sold. That's sort of just an average projection.
Is that was it from outside town residents or inside?
I didn't make that designation.
2.5 years.
Maybe I can help a little bit. We have done a fair amount of market research to ascertain what our pricing should be for this market and what we call pace of sales. And as I keep saying, it's probably half art, half science. We think we can sell, call it 24 homes a year. But that's just a very educated assessment, guess if you will, on our part. It could go a lot faster, and it could go slower. I'll give you some examples of other communities that we're selling right now in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Agency of Prospect, for instance, has been selling 30 homes a year. This past year, it slipped to 24, I believe. We have a community up in Massachusetts that's age restricted. The first year, that's 240 homes altogether. The first year we opened for sale, from the time we opened up to its first, to the first anniversary date, we sold 88 in 1 year. Well, the price in the 300,000s. It's still in Massachusetts, but so it's all over the place. Based again on our market research, that's where we think, that's what we think the pace of sales will be.
I'm just wondering if the towns looked at, the anticipated Woodbridge residents, a good portion of them open stay in the community and potentially move to this facility. What's the turnover? It was asked earlier, but maybe not directly. What's the negative impact? You're anticipating the tax base is going to stay the same because those houses are going to get filled with people. But in today's economy and environment, that may not happen. So what's the, did you build in some negative, people aren't coming to build a house that they live in. That would be a concern of mine going forward.
I just wanted to clarify one point about whoever was talking about selling the club. Remember, when we bought the club for $7 million, we were competing against developers who wanted to develop the entire property. I think the townspeople are asking for a conservation easement, which significantly reduces the value of the property. If you were to try and sell that property as a golf course without a conservation easement, the price would come up significantly. The minute you put a conservation easement on it, and the operator knows the only thing he could ever do with that is run a golf course. Well, 4 years down the road, when the golf course wasn't successful and he couldn't sell the land, he wouldn't even begin to pay anywhere near what we paid for it. Look no further than Oakland Country Club, and that does not have a conservation easement on it, I believe. The front nine, which is owned by the club, was put for sale, and they couldn't get anybody to pay $1 million for approximately half of the amount of land that we had at Oakland and that we had at Woodbridge. And recently, I guess the plan was approved for this gentleman to take it over, and he's paying significantly less than he's paying the bank, whatever he's paying them. And the zoning board mentioned the possibility of putting in a conservation easement on it, and he said, if you do that, the deal's off, I won't even buy it for whatever he's paying for, $1 million or whatever. So I sat in on the meetings with this gentleman, Matt Galvin, who's a nationally recognized golf course operator, seller, whatever. And he assured us that with a conservation easement on that property, we could never get anywhere near what we paid for it. In fact, he didn't know we could get $3 million for it.
Anna Jefferson, Amity Road. I would like to ask the board to prepare two things for that November 30th meeting for us. I'd like to have a definitive answer from the town council about the restrictions that are ongoing to inheritors, or heirs, whatever you want to call them, or bankruptcy issues, to say that those houses will stay with the 55 and over. We need a definitive answer from that on that 30th meeting. I'd also like to see someone research the number of units that are currently for sale in the town. I know every day I get emails from one of my real estate people of houses under 350,000 in the town. The houses under 350,000 in this town are gorgeous. I don't think I can sell my house for 350,000. That means I cannot afford one of those units. So I think we need to know a little bit more about the real estate flux in this town in order to make some decisions about that as well. Because if those houses are going to come on the market, then houses that are currently on the market are going to be impacted as well.
My name is Deborah Ellison, and so my questions are a couple. One is that we've heard the former first selectman say that he thinks this is terrific, he thinks this is great, perfect time. I disagree with him because, first of all, it isn't now anyway. It's my understanding that you're not going to even take real possession of this property for a couple of years. Is that not correct? When are you going to start construction? What's the proposed start date?
That will require the applications if the
If it's 21 months before they put the second payment in, they're not going to own it until at least then. Isn't they're gonna own it and they're not gonna pay for it in full?
As I understand the way the procedure would work, once all the applications, the sale were approved, once all the governmental agencies sign off on the proposal, then they would close within 60 days of that date.
And what's the proposed duration of that?
An estimate of that, how long that would take? Do you have an estimate?
We have experts, these guys do it all the time.
Probably up to 6 months.
Up to 6 months.
So you're gonna, so is this, do I have this from Toll Brothers that you're gonna close within 7 months of the time you make the first deposit?
Well, that's what's going to be, 7 months, it's going to be in the contract, so, right?
The deal as it's currently contemplated is we close on the land shortly after we receive all the necessary approvals.
But you're estimated time for the necessary approvals.
6 months.
So that you're gonna close within 7 months.
If we get all the necessary approvals, yes.
What's the average time it takes you to get necessary approvals for pieces of land that don't have zoning currently on the way you want? You have experience.
It's
What's the
quite,
average?
what's the average? It's between a year and 2 years.
Bingo. Okay,
But
that's
it's
the first
all
thing.
on-
The other thing I'd like to say just to this board, because I think there's been a lot of misinformation, maybe by, I'm so disappointed in the Board of Selectmen in the town of Woodbridge, I can't totally decide myself. But that being said is, I wanted to be clear to those people who remain here, that the original developer that you guys thought you scooped, which I think you did not, was a senior housing developer. And so this is not, it should be no shock to you that that's really a reasonable development of the site, whether it is or isn't is up to the town people to decide. But it isn't as if this person was going to come in and make this like a behemoth, New York City and Woodbridge. This person develops senior housing, and it was the intent of the person who you think you scooped to do just that. And the fact of the matter is, if in fact you felt that this was worth the $7 million, I would have thought that you'd done your homework then to be able to finance it going forward. And so I'm extraordinarily disappointed in the entire board that you did this action without having a plan. So I go back to what probably a lot of people have said at this point. I think that before you present bits and pieces of things, I think you should really have an organized, concerted look at this piece of property once and for all, come up with a number of proposals based on, of course, boards and commissions' involvement here, and then make a presentation to the town and stop wasting our time.
David Moore, 7 Westward Road. I'd like to thank the previous speaker for putting her finger on exactly what I think is the point that concerns me most about the proposal, and I'd just like to ask about the time frame. I think it's already been stated that I believe there's a limitation in the proposal that closing will occur within 60 days of obtaining the necessary approvals. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no time frame which requires Toll Brothers to actually obtain those approvals. Is that correct? Is there any reason why you couldn't actually put down your $50,000 deposit and then bank the property for 5 years without even trying to obtain any approvals? Is that, could I have a response to that question? And I bring this up, by the way, in context of the fact that we already have this, it's been mentioned several times. One, age-restricted development in this town fully permitted, which is not being pursued, and I hate that too.
That's a good question. That detail, which is a very good detail, has not yet been worked out in the contract. It's been presented at this point for the basic bones of the deal, okay? And so that's a very valid point. The payment of the purchase price has not been fixed yet in stone. The payment of the deposit has not been fixed yet in stone in terms of how much. Those are issues that have to be negotiated with Toll Brothers. But at this point, the issue before the town is the amount of the land and the basic purchase price with the credit for the removal of the cell tower. In order to proceed, this approval by the town has to move forward. Or if the town says no, then we don't go forward with that. But those are the point in terms of how you pay that and how restrictions you have on the property are details that have to be worked out in the contract. And we we have to move forward on that, as this discussion ensues.
Which then leads to my next question. I understand that what we have right now is a proposal. We don't actually have a purchase and sale agreement. And how, as townspeople, as somebody who would be a potential purchaser of a piece of property, it would be very difficult to agree to terms for the property without having a whole contract in front of you, as opposed to just say a date and a sum of money. The terms are an integral part of how you negotiate the deal. Are we actually, on November 30th, going to have the opportunity to approve an actual deal, or is it just the bare bones of the proposal and we're authorizing you to continue negotiations with blanket approval, basically, at that point?
It's not really blanket approval, it's sort of like what you did for the Country Club, is that under your charter, you have to approve the terms of the sale, which is the basic price, timeframes, things like that. The actual details of the negotiation on any of these have not been really embodied in a final contract that comes before the electorate at that point, because you have to have your board of selectmen, your first selectman, be able to sit down and negotiate that. And you can't really negotiate a contract as a committee in public. It's not really able to be done that way. So the way the charter provides is to move forward with the proposal to sell a piece of town property. What's the stated price, and what's the some of the details of that. The actual contract under the call that's being proposed, just like it was for the purchase of the Country Club, the actual contract has to be approved by your board of selectmen. So those are your elected officials. They're the ones who will see the final contract. They've heard all the issues that the folks have raised tonight, and these will be issues that they'll be looking for resolution of in the contract. The basic deal, in terms of the basic structure, has to come forward to the people to make that decision.
Okay, well, I'll just close then by saying to my board then that I would say there are, at this point in time, significant issues that remain to be addressed. And the deal, just as it looks like, from a bare bone standpoint, potentially looks like a very favorable deal for Toll Brothers. And I would just urge you to really look at it closely. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm David Vogel, 1108 Johnson Road, probably a couple of par fives away from the proposed development. And I just wanted to ask, because the projection that was given us earlier on the financials seemed to be a very optimistic projection that included aggressive buildings, aggressive contract pursuit, and coming to the necessary agreements and then selling off a lot of these $500,000 townhouses in order to get the revenue that was going to give us these big numbers. Am I correct that the downside of this is we could sell $2 million worth of the property off and it could sit fallow? There may not be any development like currently exists in the other permitted Bradley zoning area. So that the Toll Brothers don't start building if they sit with their $2 billion in cash and sit on some valuable land now that there won't be any real profit realized to this particular transaction other than the $2 million that we have to pay us. Is that sort of what I've heard the previous couple of speakers allude to? So what's the worst case scenario? I say the best case scenario. This looks like very optimistic numbers. What are the pessimistic numbers? Or maybe even the more realistic.
In terms of just more, the numbers you're getting projections is a series of assumptions. And there are many assumptions that were made that could be changed in order to fit certain circumstances. Those are the best assumptions we have available to us for making that presentation. Certainly, the debt figures themselves are very realistic, especially based on the market activities now. Those are not, those are pretty close. You know, in terms of the tax revenue, those are based on what the projections were in terms of what the sale price would be at the time of the sale, average amount of time.
That assumes a pretty aggressive sales now. Right?
Sure, you can certainly make it other assumptions and change, and therefore corresponding change to the tax revenue. The other thing that the tax revenue did not have in it was a change in the mill rate, which is we all, the mill rate was stable for the whole 20 years. As we all know, mill rate changes.
With that,
so that's an assumption. The
I
other
know we changed 3 times the first 3 years I lived here.
yeah, so that's an assumption that's worked the other way, where the mill rate can go up and therefore increase the tax revenue because the debt numbers are the same. They don't change over 20 years. But a mill rate could change, could increase the tax figures. So that's an assumption another way, you can certainly.
Okay, well, it does sound to me like the downside is we could get a few $1 million to a golf course to run and no real increased revenue to the town through taxes until such time as the developer that we've entrusted the land to decides to actually start building on it, which in this economy, I'm not sure that very many builders are doing
Yeah,
it.
there'll be a small amount for the land once it's sold until the actual development starts.
Well, thank you. I'd just like the board to consider the possible downsides to this transaction. It does seem like Amy Morella did point out that we're giving away some of the best features of the golf course in terms of residential area around it. And it may not actually yield a financial bonanza to us, and yet we still are going to have a golf course to deal with that's on our hands for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Still knowing who I am. I just want one clarification, Ed. Could you mention again what you said about the fact that Toll Brothers will be paying us a half the amount of money in 1 month after or 2 months after the papers are all the certificates and everything are set, and then the other half 21 months after that? Is that what you said? With no interest?
I didn't say that, but that's the case.